everyone. Welcome back to Playtime. If this is your first time, my name is Tammy Taw, and I'm an apps growth consultant based in San Francisco. As app growth consultants, we focus on identifying buyer trends across the Play ecosystem and help developers like yourselves find opportunities to grow. So if you've been to Playtime before, you might have noticed that my topics tend to focus on Play buyer conversion. So today is no different. Christina shared a lot of KPIs, and we're going to look at different business tactics to help perfect your buyer conversion strategy across your buyer base. So I know this is pretty broad. Let's start off by talking about our emotions. And don't worry, this is not a therapy session. We're not going to go too deep here. But emotions are something we all can relate to. And when I recommend business strategies to drive growth, I gotta be honest, I lose sight of what the user might be thinking and feeling as they go through the buyer journey. So let's consider your user's emotions as they go through the onboarding flow. Maybe even consider your own emotions. I know for me, and I don't speak for all buyers, but as a new buyer, I wanna be confident the product is right for me before I decide to make a committed purchase. And as an active buyer, I want to make sure I'm getting the benefits I expected as I continue to pay. And as a past buyer, now using the free version of your app, I might be missing the premium experience I once had and be tempted to buy again. Now, let's consider your business strategy for maximizing new buyer conversion, optimizing LTV, and winning back past buyers. Which cohort do you focus on today? Is your new buyer conversion strategy the same as your past buyer conversion strategy? How do you optimize LTV of active buyers? And what can you do beyond ensuring that these buyers just renew every time? How do your business tactics connect to those emotions that we just talked about? Let's explore common optimization tactics top-performing apps do, because when we look at the anatomy of a Play app's buyer base, over a 2-year time period, a typical app's buyer base can be divided into these states, where a third of buyers are first-time buyers who buy for the first time, regardless of when they've installed. Over half are what we call active buyers. These buyers have purchased within the last 30 days. And then a tenth of users are what we call past buyers. These are users who haven't purchased in more than 30 days. So these buyer states are similar to the individual's buyer journey. A buyer who makes an initial purchase is a first-time buyer, who then moves to an active buyer state when they continue to purchase, and then eventually they stop purchasing and become past buyers. If we acknowledge each distinct state, we'll notice there's different characteristics. So there's probably engagement characteristics that are different. Here, I'm showing the transaction value a buyer makes in each of these states. Given the higher transaction value of new buyers, the goal is ensuring that these buyers move to an active buyer state and prevent them from becoming past buyers. These similarities and differences may drive certain behaviors. So for example, the lack of wanting to pay again because that first purchase price was really high. So remember, these are individual transaction prices, not total revenue per buyer. For the next 30 minutes, we'll take a look at top percentile apps, their KPIs, and share business tactics for common growth challenges that we see across developers for each of these states. We'll start with maximizing premium activation of first-time buyers. We'll cover how to give your CRM team the flexibility to target the right offer to the right user at the right time, no matter where users are in their journey. The next challenge is how to maintain and optimize on active buyers. Christina talked a lot about this with hybrid monetization. So where are there opportunities to enhance your existing buyers' premium experience? How can you provide them complementary products like stackables, or even upgrades to a longer plan? And then lastly, we'll look at opportunities to reactivate past buyers. Some users come back as a free user, so is it an opportunity for them to spend again? And is it all about pricing and promotions, or are there other factors that drive repurchasing? And let's try to remember the user's emotional state as they go through the buyer journey, as every moment can be a purchase opportunity. So the goal here is to get me excited about your product to buy in it, keep me loving your product, and make me miss it when I cancel my subscription. Okay, enough about emotions. Let's jump right into each of these distinct buyer states individually. We'll spend most of the time in this first section, as I know maximizing first-time buyer conversion is a top priority for many of you. We'll focus on the timeline of when new users purchase after they install, the business tactics of apps that are successful in driving new buyer conversion. Okay, be ready. My slides are a bit data heavy, but I will explain every graph, so feel free to take pictures to share back with your team. This chart looks at the buyer distribution of first-time buyers relative to their install date of top-performing apps on Play. I know it looks a little different than what Christina shared, and I'm looking at a different segment of Play apps. So the way we calculate first-time buyer across these different distributions of first week, first month, first quarter, first year, and a year later is by looking at their initial payment date and comparing it to their install date. Does anyone do this type of analysis today? Awesome, I see some nods. So in top-performing apps, about a quarter of first-time buyers make their purchase within the first week of install. Who has a lot of buyers in the first week? Raise your hand. That's pretty good. Okay, take note of those people. On the other end of the chart, we have 2 out of 5 buyers in top-performing apps who buy for the first time a whole year later. Who has a lot of buyers who buy way later? We got one person. Well, I don't think this is actually a bad thing. I think they're eventually converting buyers. So the goal is to find areas where you can drive those buyers sooner. So what factors motivate how soon a user purchases after install? It's a combination of marketing and business tactics. So before a user installs, there's likely brand awareness and app familiarity, which is driven by your acquisition strategy. I won't focus on this today, but we'll talk about the remaining tactics. So once a user has installed and starts a first session in your app, the business model, the paywall strategy, onboarding, utilization, as well as offers and promotions may affect if and when someone buys. It's likely a combination of tactics across these factors. So we'll look at correlations from top-performing apps that have a lot of early buyers and those that have a lot of late buyers. To do this, I created 2 cohorts. One we'll call early buyer apps. These apps have a high % of first-time buyers who purchase in the first month, as well as a high install to buyer conversion rate. Then the other will look at a group called late buyer apps, with a high % of first-time buyers who buy a year later. Remember, not a bad KPI, as these apps also have a high buyer over MAU ratio. So they're able to drive long-term engagement and then a purchase conversion. Okay, to kick off the key differences in these 2 groups, I looked at the top percentile apps and their performance. So in the early buyer apps, 3 out of 4 first-time buyers are buying in month 1, and where a majority buy in a week 1. And as Christina mentioned, the content and goal-oriented use cases are one of many drivers for earlier purchases. In late buyer apps, the top percentiles app have 2 out of 3 first-time buyers buying a year after install. Remember, these apps still have a high % of buyer over MAU, so they do a good job of converting buyers as well. Let's now look at the factors that I mentioned earlier on what might drive earlier or later first purchases. So in the next set of slides, we'll compare early buyer apps with late buyer apps across each of these business tactics. Most graphs represent the % of apps in each cohort that support tactics I just mentioned. There's always trade-offs to make, so consider these tactics based on your buyer conversion strategy. Paywall strategy is something to think through carefully. The meter paywall is supported in more late buyer apps in the lightest blue on the right. And I have to admit, I do like a meter paywall. It's not a bad user experience. It gives me the premium experience I want Even though it's limited, I am very careful about how often I go into the app. As a developer, though, ensure your users need the premium content or feature frequently to drive an earlier purchase. So in early buyer apps, there's a higher percent of apps that support the gated paywall, the blue in the middle. Limiting certain key features behind a paywall may influence earlier purchases, as users' needs for those paid features may be more urgent. Obviously, with a hard paywall, that really forces urgency. But as you can see in both cohorts, this one standard paywall is rarely among top developers anymore. All right, let's look at business model differences between these two cohorts. Of the 3 business models, there are obviously subscriptions only, IAPs only, and a mix of both, hybrid, on the very right. In late buyer apps, a higher percent support subscriptions. With subscription only, a user might take a longer time to decide if a recurring subscription is right for them. So if you do offer subscriptions only, how can you remove the hesitation by lowering the barrier of entry? Here, in early buyer apps, a higher percent of apps support the hybrid model. Hybrid model provides flexibility and enables users to buy what is right for their needs when they need it, which might correlate to earlier purchases. So think about it. If you were to expand your business model, what could you offer? One way is additional SKU lanes, especially if you only offer subscriptions. So at this point, most developers support the monthly and yearly SKU, so I didn't include them here. But the blue bars represent the percent of apps in each cohort that support each of the lanes listed here. What surprised me is that 80% of early buyer apps now support the weekly SKU, while only 7% of late buyer apps support that same length. Even though the weekly SKU is perceived to be short-term, we have seen considerable adoption for that weekly length among top developers and buyers. App adoption has tripled since 2022, and the 1-year LTV of the weekly SKU is comparable to the 1-year LTV of the monthly SKU. So remember, for some users, it's about that transaction price more so than the savings on the longer subscription. Also, consider the 3-month and 6 months, as we see more early buyer apps have that, and it gives users optionality. Along with SKU lengths, let's look at other offers, specifically intro offers. The trial offer and the intro price offer are the most common that we see, and this chart looks at the percent difference of the number of apps in each cohort that support the intro or trial offer. The left bar shows that less early buyer apps support trial offers, as more early buyer apps tend to support the intro price, and some offer even both, whether they're combined as one or 2 distinct offers for their users. So there are trade-offs when choosing what offer is right for you, and Hemin will elaborate more on trial offer effectiveness with respect to renewal and LTV versus non-promoted offers. For trial offers, 7-day trial length is the most common trial length to offer among developers. And for those who offer intro price, we see 20 to 40% off the original price being the most common offer. Okay, intro and trial offers are just 2 types of offers. You're probably now wondering, how many offers do I really need? Don't stop at just the intro price and trial offer, as we see developers offering more than 1 offer per SKU length. So in terms of the number of offers you should have, today we see developers offering at least 4 different distinct offers for each of these popular lanes, the weekly, monthly, and yearly. So think about how many offers you have today for each of the lanes that you offer. For the subscription length, when I look at the minimum and max prices offered in a given app, the highest price is 2 to 3 times more than the lowest price offered. This shows you the range and flexibility of prices that these apps offer potential buyers. So with more offers, what combinations could you offer? I know you're probably familiar with many of these offer levers that you can pull, from lanes, subscription tiers, promotion types, timing and duration of your promotions. There's a web of permutations. It's hard for me to tell you which one is best offered for your users, but I encourage you to test various combinations for a variety of the users that you have. One combination can be better suited for one cohort over another. And remember, don't offer all these combinations to every user all at once. That will create decision paralysis. Start with base offers that is available to everyone. If a user doesn't convert right away or within the first month, then systematically decide which offer combination suits that user the best based on their engagement. Oops. And let's not forget IAPs. In top-performing apps that offer IAPs, the median SKU count each app provides is about 14 different IAP offers. The price point percentile also varies. Multiple options allow potential buyers to choose what is right for them. And it also allows your team to adjust for local pricing and cultural events in specific markets. For those who don't have IAPs, you might want to consider testing. If anything, it's a good way for a buyer to test premium features without a commitment. There are two types, consumables and durables, ones that go away with use and ones that a user can keep forever. I won't go into detail here because I think you've seen this slide before and know the different ways that you can experiment with IAPs. But remember, buyers have a different appetite for IAPs as these are one-time purchases that don't require a commitment like a subscription. Ultimately, though, you want your buyers to be enticed and either repeat that purchase or, ideally, upgrade to a subscription. Christina mentioned how critical first-day engagement is in driving conversion. Let's quickly take a look at day 1 minutes between early and late buyer apps before we close out the first-time buyer section. Each segment in the bar graph represents the amount of time a user spends on the first day. So in early buyer apps, over 50% of users spend 10 minutes or more on the first day, represented by the 3 shades of blue on the right. And in late buyer apps, over 50% of users spend 5 minutes or less on that first day, represented by the bar on the left. One key way to encourage valuable time spent on day 1 is a good onboarding flow. Ensure that the user really understands your value proposition. The tactics I covered correlate to apps that have a lot of early buyers and late buyers. Remember, it's important to test these tactics for causation, depending on your first-time buyer objectives. If you're hoping to drive earlier conversion, testing a hybrid model gives user optionality and lowers the barrier of entry. And remember, continue to test what you're limiting with your paywall. Motivate users to deeply engage on day 1. And if they understand your value proposition, you're better equipped to target the right offer to the right user at the right time. And finally, to enable this dynamic targeting capability, ensure that your inventory is robust so that your CRM team can choose different combinations for the distinct buyer cohorts that you have. All right, let's now look at active buyers. If you recall the pie chart in the beginning, this is where the majority of buyers are across these 3 buyer states. Here, I focus my analysis on hybrid apps that not only have a high percentage of active buyers, but are able to drive a high number of purchase transactions from their buyers. In addition, these apps have a high buyer over MAU ratio. So before we dive in deeper into hybrid optimization, let's look at the limitation of other business models. In subscription apps, yes, a high percent of users renew their subscription in a 90-day period, but the median 90-day ARPU across subscription apps is only $18. So remember this as we go through each scenario. Your ARPU is limited to your subscription price, and you're trusting that the buyer renews every time. So before we look at ARPU expansion possibilities, let's also look at IAPs. So apps that are only offering IAPs, a little more than half of users repeat their purchase in 90 days. IAP introduces variability, but enables incrementality, which allows users to choose what they want. This is obviously less predictable and more risky than subscriptions, but the incrementality drives a higher 90-day ARPU than subscription-only apps. Okay, what happens if we mix the best of both worlds? This data might look familiar to past Playtimes. The bar chart shows the percent of buyers and the percent of spend from each buyer type. There's subscription buyers on the left, IAP buyers in the middle, and hybrid buyers who buy both on the right in the lightest blue. So a hybrid buyer makes up only 15% of buyers in a hybrid app, but their contribution to spend is 35%, which means their ARPU value is substantially more than those other buyers. It's just that by just one type. Since hybrid apps provide users with flexibility, let's look at the value of hybrid buyers depending on what they buy first. 46% of buyers in a hybrid app purchase subscription first. About 1 in 4 go on to buy an IAP next. For those that do go buy an IAP next, their 90-day ARPU is about $71. The other half of buyers buy IAP first, and only 1 out of 6 IAP buyers go on to buy a subscription next, but their 90-day ARPU is the most optimal. Let's now compare first and second purchase price of hybrid buyers who buy one or the other first. Between the two, there's only about a $5 difference in first purchase price. But when a hybrid buyer buys a subscription first, it's something that's typically more expensive, their next purchase price is 24% less. And for those who buy an IAP first, which is typically cheaper than a subscription, their next purchase price is 22% more. So really consider the first transaction price as you upsell the next purchase. Here are a couple of examples of what to upsell in a hybrid app. First and foremost, acknowledge that initial purchase and the value your users are getting. Get them excited. Then go in with the upsell. For those who bought a subscription first, maybe you can suggest a complementary stackable product as the next purchase. For example, in an education app, offer custom content, challenging tests to upskill your users. For buyers who bought a consumable IAP first, how can you get them to buy a subscription? Maybe before they run out of that consumable item, remind them that the subscription offer is better and has more value. Do the math for them. The key with active buyers is just to understand them quickly and provide meaningful ways to enhance that paid experience. We know hybrid buyers are the most valuable, so consider testing hybrid as you may be limiting the user's experience as well as a higher ARPU. And I know many of you who have subscriptions only are worried about cannibalization, but try only offering stackable IAPs to your active subscribers. Those with hybrid business models already, be considerate of that first purchase, especially the price that that user paid, and make sure to optimize for that next purchase. Okay, let's now look at our last group, past buyers. Our very first chart showed 1 out of 10 buyers are past buyers, which means these buyers haven't purchased in 30 days or more. Let's take a look at how we can bring these old buyers back to the paid experience. For this group of apps, I looked at apps that have a high % of past buyers and another set that have high resubscription rate with past buyers who took a little time to come back and resubscribe. Let's first take a look at apps with a lot of past buyers. So this chart looks at past buyers who made purchases across different time frames, ranging from 32 to 90 days to all the way up to 2 years later. So these users haven't purchased in this amount of time. The highest median transaction value are users who spent over a year ago, which is not too surprising, as these are probably yearly subscribers. But this is a reminder that your yearly length caps users, and higher prices probably prevent them from spending more frequently and recently. If users are converting at higher prices, consider the value in ensuring users see that value. Christina mentioned creating additional content to not only ensure annual renewal, but also push incremental spend during that year-long subscription. There's the importance of content updates, and Hemen will talk about how to do this with respect to early engagement after a user buys a subscription. And speaking of engagement, deep daily engagement is key. This chart shows the median daily minutes and daily sessions in each cohort. Active buyers are in the dark blue, and past buyers are in the lighter blue. Active buyers apps drive 3 times more daily minutes than past buyer apps. The number of sessions per day doesn't seem to be as critical here, but deeper engagement on a daily basis can reactivate past buyers and move them back to an active buyer state. Last year, we talked about subscriber fatigue and whether or not users are coming back. Here's a year-over-year view of subscription orders since 2022, broken down by resubscription at the top, net new orders in the middle, and concurrent orders on the bottom. In the distribution of orders, you'll notice that the percent of net new orders are shrinking, as concurrent orders and resubscriptions are growing. So this shows some app maturity. If you're a mature app, and you can't solely rely on net new buyers anymore, make sure to also create a strategy for your active and past buyers to complement that growth. So some of these KPIs might look familiar to you from my talk last year. As a refresher, about a quarter of users resubscribe, and after they've canceled, they only take 45 days to resubscribe. But what I found surprising was that they don't come back at a lower price. I would have made a bet that users waited till a promotion to resubscribe, as I tend to. But what this tells me is that price doesn't move the purchase behavior, but instead the value proposition does. Your premium content, the product, the features are key drivers that get your users to purchase again. So make sure each time you have a content update or a feature update to tell your users across multiple channels. To wrap up on past buyers, meaningful daily engagement is key to getting past buyers as an active buyer again. Don't put all your focus on net new orders, as resubscription orders are growing and make up 40% of all orders. And remember, most resubscribers don't need a lower price to come back. Most importantly, focus on engagement and make sure they had a memorable paid experience. And don't forget to update them when you make major updates to your app. Before we wrap up, let's look at how you can activate unique offers for each of these buyer states. When you're thinking about upsell screens and paywalls, don't forget about the emotion the user might be in as they go through that, as they're thinking about that purchase. Here are a few examples of how you can do that. With new buyer, acknowledge 100% completion of onboarding and get them excited about what they can do with your app, and offer a meaningful one-time discount for a limited time. But don't overdo this. I think some users are pretty savvy and they'll know that they'll get a discount again, so do it sparingly. And maybe even offer a weekly SKU for users who don't purchase after the first month or two. With an active buyer, acknowledge their initial payment and the premium experience users are enjoying as they are enjoying it. Present an offer that allows them to complement or even upgrade that current experience. Maybe include an exclusive bonus content that is just customized for them. And then for past buyers, let's say your churned buyers keep coming back as freemium users. Acknowledge what they've accomplished during the premium experience they once had. Remember, it might not be about price, and more so about the value they're getting for their next purchase. Okay, we reviewed a lot of different tactics that correlate with high percent of first-time buyers in month 1, and even late buyers a year later. We'll also look at how to increase the active buyer ARPU value, as well as how to lessen the percent of past buyers and bring them back if they do lapse. So what tactics are best for you? I know you already track a lot of metrics, so here are a few additional ways to slice your data. Track when first-time buyers purchase relative to their install date. Identify buyers who might want more based on their engagement, and don't ignore past buyers who return frequently as free users. Then test and build robust inventory of offers that your CRM team can then strategically utilize across these different buyer states. This data set can enable dynamic business strategies, as well as power your AI that will not only maximize new buyer conversion, but incrementally grow active buyers so there are fewer past buyers. So coming out of this talk, you should at least have one new buyer conversion strategy per each of these buyer states that you'll bring back to the team to test. Most importantly, as you test and validate these new tactics across each of these states, let's remind ourselves that the emotional state we want our new, active, and past buyers to be in. Excited, happy, and loyal customers, new or old, are always willing to spend when your product meets their expectations and serves their needs. Thank you for your time. I hope this presentation gave you some food for thought on how to analyze buyers across different buyer states. And think through the different ways to maximize and optimize conversion across your buyer base.